Before the Bible was written, before Greek heroes or Roman legends, the oldest surviving epic on Earth was recorded about a Sumerian king described in the ancient tablets as a giant nearly 16 feet tall. His name was Gilgamesh, a king so powerful his own people begged the gods to stop him. He ruled with more strength than any man of his age. He completed the city's massive walls, shaped its temples, and led it into prosperity. But the same forces that built the city also weighed heavily on its people. The tablets describe him as a ruler with an intensity that went far beyond what the citizens could endure. He demanded labor without rest. He took away privileges that disrupted families, and his authorities had no limits. The citizens appealed to the gods. Their request was not to remove Gilgamesh or destroy him, but to bring balance. They wanted someone who could stand equal to him. Someone who could push back against his excesses without collapsing under his strength. The gods answered this request by creating a counterpart. They shaped a being from clay, crafting him with the raw power needed to oppose Gilgamesh. This creation would not enter the story as a soldier, but as a force emerging from the wilderness. This being was named Enkidu. He did not grow up in a palace or a village. He appeared in the open plains, covered in hair, moving with animals and living in complete harmony with the natural world. He drank beside gazelles, ran with them, and protected them from hunters. He knew nothing of cities, laws, or the ways of humans. His world was the wilderness, and in that world, he possessed unmatched strength. Hunters quickly realized this new figure was not like other men. He broke their traps, he freed the animals that were meant for capture, and disrupted their work without hesitation. His presence caused confusion and fear because he could not be controlled or reasoned with. He operated purely on instinct as a wild man. Meanwhile, in the city of Uruk, Gilgamesh continued to rule with unchecked power. The arrival of this wild man, though he did not know it yet, was the beginning of a change that would alter the king's life completely. The hunter who first saw this wild man was shocked by his strength and his connections to the animals. No matter what traps he set, Enkidu tore them apart and freed whatever had been caught. This hunter felt powerless. He could not confront him, and ignoring him was impossible because Enkidu ruined his livelihood. His father advised his son to go directly to Gilgamesh. Only the king had the insight or authority to understand such a problem. When Gilgamesh heard about the wild man, he understood more than the hunter expected. He recognized that the gods had intervened. The description of Enkidu matched what Gilgamesh imagined as an equal would look like. Powerful, untrained, free from civilization, and capable of resisting him directly. Instead of reacting with force, Gilgamesh devised a strategy to draw Enkidu into the human world. He instructed the hunter to return to the plains with a woman from the temple, someone capable of bridging the gap between the wilderness and human society. This hunter obeyed, and the woman followed him into the open lands. They waited by the watering place where Enkidu drank with the animals. When the wild man approached again, she revealed herself. Her presence immediately changed the balance. The animals moved away, confused by something they had never seen. Enkidu's attention shifted directly to her. For several days, this woman remained with the wild man, and when he later rejoined the animals, they fled from him. His bond with them had been severed. The wildness that once tied him to the plains had loosened. He was becoming something different. Still strong, but no longer entirely a part of the natural world. The woman then led Enkidu to a shepherd's camp. There he encountered human customs for the first time. The shepherds welcomed him cautiously, offering him bread. Enkidu did not know what to do with it. They gave him wine, but he had never seen it before. The woman guided him through the basic acts that define human social life: eating prepared food, drinking wine, and grooming his body, and wearing clothing. With each step, Enkidu moved further from his life among the animals and closer to the world of people. He joined the shepherds in their daily lives and quickly gained their trust. Using his strength, he protected them from predators. They came to rely on him, and he learned how humans lived through work, cooperation, and community. Soon the wild man heard stories of the king Gilgamesh. These were not stories of admiration. They described the king's harsh rule and the way he imposed himself on people. Enkidu absorbed this information and felt a growing sense of injustice. The man he had been created to counter was not merely strong, he was excessive, unrestrained, and capable of harming his own people through his authority. He made a decision. He would go to the city of Uruk and confront King Gilgamesh. He left the shepherds and walked toward the city, driven not by instinct but by a sense of purpose he had never known in the wild. This is the first time that Gilgamesh had met someone who could challenge him, and this confrontation nearly broke the city. Enkidu arrived in Uruk at a critical moment. Gilgamesh was on his way to a bridal chamber, a moment of authority the people resented. Enkidu stepped into the doorway and blocked him. Gilgamesh attempted to pass, but Enkidu refused to move. The tension escalated instantly. The two men seized each other. The tablets describe their struggle as so intense that the building shook. They grappled through the doorway and into the streets, each refusing to yield. After a long struggle, Gilgamesh forced Enkidu to the ground, but instead of anger, the moment produced clarity. Enkidu recognized Gilgamesh's superiority. Gilgamesh recognized Enkidu's strength. Their struggle created a mutual respect. The hostility dissolved, and they stood as equals. Once he had found his equal, he aimed for something greater than power, permanence. Now united, Gilgamesh and Enkidu began to develop a sense of shared purpose. Gilgamesh revealed a desire that had long been inside him but never voiced with conviction, to accomplish something that would outlast his life. He proposed a journey to the Cedar Forest, a distant and sacred region under the control of the god Enlil. Its guardian was Humbaba, a being appointed to protect the forest. Humbaba's reputation made even strong men hesitate. His presence was said to overwhelm, his approach to inspire fear. Enkidu, who knew the wilderness better than anyone, warned Gilgamesh about the danger. He understood what it meant to confront a guardian placed by a god. He knew the risk of provoking forces that maintained a cosmic order, but Gilgamesh was determined. He believed that confronting Humbaba was the path to a legacy worthy of remembrance. Gilgamesh then approached his mother, known for her insight. She performed rituals to seek divine protection for her son. She adopted Enkidu into her family, strengthening the bond between the two companions. They stepped beyond the walls of the city of Uruk and began the journey toward the Cedar Forest. They advanced toward the distant mountains. Days stretched across uninhabited terrain, and the boundaries of the world they understood grew thin. As they traveled, Gilgamesh began to feel something unfamiliar: fear. He had never faced uncertainty, never questioned his own strength, never doubted a decision, but now, walking toward a force placed by a god, he felt hesitation. Each night, Gilgamesh slept and woke from troubling dreams. The tablets describe these dreams as filled with sudden violence, mountains collapsing, storms striking without warning, and encounters with forces too large to comprehend. Gilgamesh believed these dreams foretold doom. He spoke to Enkidu with visible anxiety. The wild man interpreted these dreams differently. Drawing on his deep understanding of the wilderness, he reassured Gilgamesh. He believed that the dreams indicated support from beyond, not destruction. His interpretation strengthened Gilgamesh, who relied on Enkidu's steadiness as they pushed deeper into the unknown regions. The path took them over thick forests, over steep slopes, and across long plains. Gilgamesh's confidence rose and fell with each step, but Enkidu maintained a consistent presence, guiding him and urging him forward. Enkidu recognized the seriousness of stepping into this territory. The air carried a weight and stillness that felt unnatural. The ground felt dense and the silence carried a sense of anticipation. Humbaba knew they had entered. His presence was announced not with words, but the changes in the environment, shifts in the wind, movements of shadows, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. As they moved deeper, Enkidu became tense. Gilgamesh felt the pressure too, but he directed his focus on the goal. The two companions advanced together until the guardian finally revealed himself. Humbaba emerged with an imposing presence that confirmed every warning Enkidu had given. His power was evident in the way the forest reacted to him. The two men prepared themselves. The confrontation they had traveled so far to face was now unavoidable. The battle began immediately. Humbaba approached with strength that exceeded anything mortals could match. Gilgamesh attacked with determination, but for every strike he delivered, Humbaba responded with a greater force. The tablets describe Humbaba as overwhelming, forcing the two to rely on both physical power and strategic cooperation. Gilgamesh called on the forces and gods he trusted, and the wind rose against Humbaba. These winds hindered the guardian's movement, allowing Gilgamesh and Enkidu to fight with greater leverage. Aided by the winds, the tide of the battle began to turn. The forest grew silent. The guardian assigned by the forest god had been defeated. In this moment of victory, both companions felt the weight of what they had done. Killing Humbaba was not just a heroic act, it was the disruption of a divine order. Their triumph in the Cedar Forest won them admiration from mortals, but it angered the gods and goddesses. Gilgamesh and Enkidu cut cedar trees to mark their accomplishment. They prepared the timber and began their return journey. The weight of what they had done lingered in the air, but their focus remained on bringing proof of their victory back to the city of Uruk. And when they returned, the reception was powerful. The people celebrated their success, seeing the cedar as a sign of courage. Gilgamesh's reputation increased, and Enkidu stood beside him as his equal in accomplishment. Ishtar, the goddess of love, sex, and fertility, observed Gilgamesh's growing fame and strength and approached him with an offer. She expressed interest in joining herself to him, granting him favor in association with divine influence. Gilgamesh immediately refused. Ishtar reacted with fury. She went to her father and demanded the release of the Bowl of Heaven to punish Gilgamesh. Her request was granted. When the Bowl of Heaven descended, it brought destruction across the land. The force of divine punishment threatened the city of Uruk itself. Enkidu and Gilgamesh fought this bowl, and their cooperation, strength, and determination allowed them to defeat it. Their victory once again was celebrated by the mortals, but it deepened the tensions with the gods. These gods assembled to decide the fate of the two companions. They reviewed the actions that had brought the companions glory, the killing of Humbaba and the killing of the Bowl of Heaven. They acknowledged the scale of these deeds, but also recognized that both actions violated order established by divine authority. A decision was required. They could not strike Gilgamesh, whose destiny included future trials. They chose to punish Enkidu. It was determined that he would die. Enkidu realized the sentence had been issued and began to suffer. The tablets described his illness in harsh detail. He grew weaker as days passed. He reflected on his transformation from wild creature to companion of a king, and the path that led him to his current suffering. Visions of the underworld filled his mind as he recognized that his life was nearing its end. Gilgamesh watched his friend deteriorate. His death hit Gilgamesh with a weight he had never known. He prepared Enkidu's body with care and oversaw rituals to honor him. But grief alone is not what transformed Gilgamesh. Enkidu's death awakened a fear that struck deeper than any blade. Gilgamesh now realized that he too would someday die. The strength that had carried him through life, the victories that made his name known, and the accomplishments that shaped the city of Uruk could not protect him from the fate that had claimed Enkidu. Mortality, once a distant idea, became an unavoidable reality. This realization shattered Gilgamesh. He abandoned the identity that he once held. No longer was he motivated by strength, ambition, or a desire for fame. Instead, he was driven by a desperate need to escape the fate that took his friend. He left the city of Uruk behind, no longer in royal garments or surrounded by attendants. He wore skins, walked alone, and began a journey driven by fear and longing. He sought the one mortal who had escaped death, Utnapishtim. It was this man, according to ancient tradition, that had survived the Great Flood and been granted a life that did not end. Gilgamesh believed that if one man had escaped death, there must be a way for him to do the same. But just like in the past, to reach the man to escape death, Gilgamesh would have to first face the guardians of the mountain. He arrived at Mount Mashu, a boundary between the world of men and the path traveled by the sun. At its entrance stood two beings, half scorpion, half human. They guarded the way through the mountain, watching all who approached. When Gilgamesh came to them, they questioned him. They saw his worn body, his desperation, and the depth of his grief. They understood that he was not on a mission of conquest. Seeing the sincerity of his purpose, they allowed him to attempt the passage through the mountains. As he walked further, there was total darkness. The path ran straight through, crossing 12 leagues of shadow. No sunlight reached it, and no normal man could endure such a journey without losing his way. Gilgamesh entered that darkness and forced himself to keep moving, driven by determination alone. Time inside this tunnel was measured not by sight, but by the effort of each step. Gilgamesh pressed forward until finally, after passing the full distance, he emerged into a bright landscape, a garden filled with unusual trees and stones that seemed to shine like precious metals. This place was not part of the everyday world. It signaled that he had crossed out of the realm meant for ordinary mortals and into a region shaped by divine influence. At the edge of this world, Gilgamesh finally met someone who would tell him the truth, a truth that he did not want to hear. Beyond those mountains came a shore of a distant sea where a woman named Sidiri kept a tavern. Gilgamesh explained who he was and why he had come so far. He spoke of Enkidu's death and the fear of his own mortality, and of his desires to find Utnapishtim, the one man rumored to live beyond the reach of death. Siduri understood his pain and the truth that lay behind it. She told him that seeking to escape the fate of humans was futile. The conditions of mortality once set could not be overturned. Her words urged acceptance of life as it is, limited, fragile, and defined by its boundaries. But Gilgamesh was not ready to hear that. His fear of death drowned out any call to acceptance. The waters of death could not be crossed by normal means. No hand, foot, or tool could come into direct contact with them without ruin. To cross safely, Gilgamesh had to cut a large number of long wooden poles. Each pole would be used to push the boat forward, then discarded, ensuring that nothing living or essential touched the water itself. And on the far side of the sea lived the one man who had been separated from the rest of humanity by the gift of immortality. At last, after using the final pole and resorting to simple momentum, Gilgamesh reached the distant shore. By reaching Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh arrived at the end of the world's path, where only a single man had ever been allowed to remain. Utnapishtim listened as Gilgamesh poured out his grief and fear. The king of the city of Uruk, who once seemed unshakable, now stood as a man broken by the death of his friend and terrified of his own end. He demanded to know how Utnapishtim had obtained a life without end and whether he could gain the same condition. Utnapishtim explained that his situation was unique, tied to events long past when the gods decided to flood the world and later granted him a special place apart from ordinary human fate. This was not a path set out for others to follow. To show Gilgamesh he could not simply be given what he wanted, Utnapishtim set a test. Gilgamesh would remain awake for an extended span, demonstrating a degree of control and endurance that might justify further consideration. Gilgamesh accepted this challenge, thinking he could pass it, but his eyes began to grow heavy, and he would soon fall asleep, and he stayed asleep much longer than he realized. When he finally woke up, he insisted that he had only slept for a moment, even though clear evidence had showed he had been asleep for days. This proved he couldn't meet the requirements for immortality, and that Utnapishtim's condition wasn't something a human could simply receive. Even so, Utnapishtim did not send him away empty-handed. He revealed that there existed a plant deep beneath the water, one that could restore a person's youth. Retrieving it would be difficult, but within Gilgamesh's reach. Gilgamesh dove into the depths, found the plant, and brought it back. For the first time since Enkidu's death, he carried something that seemed capable of reversing at least part of his loss that time imposes on human beings. With the plant of renewed youth in his possession, Gilgamesh decided to return to the city of Uruk. His plan was not to use this plant immediately. He intended to bring it back to the city and test it on an elder. For the first time in a long while, he walked with a sense of cautious hope. On the journey home, Gilgamesh stopped to bathe. While he was in the water, a serpent was drawn by the plant's scent. It emerged, took the plant, and retreated. As it left, it shed its skin, a detail that reinforced the plant's power, now lost to Gilgamesh forever. When Gilgamesh realized what had happened, he understood the full weight of his situation. All his effort, all his suffering, and all his determination had brought him close to a tangible method of pushing back aging, only to have it removed in a moment where he got distracted. There was nothing left to pursue. Utnapishtim had made it clear that immortality was not available to other mortals. The plant had been his last chance at even a partial victory over time, and it was gone. The only path left was to return to Uruk and face life as a man subject to the same limits as every other human being. When he neared the city, Gilgamesh looked at the tall walls, the same walls that framed the story at the beginning. They were strong, carefully built, and made to last. He recognized that while his own life would end, the works he had made and the order he had brought to this city could continue to live long after him. His journey had not given him what he thought he wanted. It gave him something else, an understanding that human life is defined not by escaping death, but by what is created, preserved, and remembered within its boundaries. And that is the oldest epic in human history, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Thank you so much for watching my videos. I have a members only channel that I'd like you to check out. Go see if there's anything that catches your eye there. It's a great way to support my work. I also have these amazing 3D maps here. They'd be a great Christmas gift for a loved one, and they're on sale. So check that out at Mirway Maps. If you could use the link in my bio, I'd really appreciate it. And please give me some credit in the post-purchase survey. We're going to keep telling these amazing stories and try to bring them to life with AI. Some people don't like the AI. But I really think it's going to get better and better. My skills with this are going to get better. And there's something about it that just keeps me wanting to make more of these. I've been overwhelmed by the reception of these. And I just want to thank everybody for all your support. I always pitch the maps. I always pitch my members only channel, but really the best thing you could do to support my channel is just keep watching, keep enjoying, like, subscribe, leave a comment if you got some time. I really appreciate it. So take care, everybody, and I'll catch you next episode.